What is up, everybody? We're excited to be doing this show live today. We look forward to answering all your questions in the chat. Nick, there's going to be a lot to discuss this week. It's the biggest event of the season. But before we get into all of our favorite fades, plays, opinions for this week's tournament, I do very quickly want to touch on Underdog Fantasy and how you can take advantage of their sign-up bonus for not only golf. This is the week of the Masters, so I'm expecting everybody to be using it for golf, but you can also take advantage of all their other sports. Drafts, higher, lower options, their fun rivals feature, pits you against other players for the week. All of those options are available for you to play the game how you want. Sign up today over at Underdog with the code BGP to get a 100% match bonus of up to $100. If you have any questions about all the great perks of Underdog, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at TOffSports. But Nick, it is Masters Week. There is a lot to discuss with this tournament. How are you doing?
I'm in a tough spot right now. I don't know if I'm reposting our live link here. Also, the Albatross on Underdog Fantasy. If you're looking for the majors competition, it actually is pretty solid. I would certainly have like another screen up of who's all qualified for all the majors, because obviously you want to try to get as many guys with 4 eligibilities. But it looks like there's an overlay in that contest in Underdog. So again, I've been very harsh on Underdog for their product at times, but I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. It's a full majors season, so just the 4. So check that out. Looks like a massive overlay. I think it's only $10 buy-in, so you can get a couple entries in there and still have a decent edge, assuming that it does not fill. But yeah, man. All right. This is the first time I think I've done my player pool before we've actually done Bettor Golf. Usually we I'll talk about most of the people in the price range. I've excluded 53 golfers, Scotty Scheffler being one of them. I'll let you talk about that in a minute. And I want to get this pool down to 30-ish. So I won't talk about everybody, but I'm fading Scotty Scheffler. Let's just start there. Are you okay with it? It's like, I understand the risk. The price is up there. I'm not going to talk about the baby thing. I think that's probably, very rare that actually happens when she's doing like 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know much about that. My mom is actually a labor and delivery nurse. So, I could maybe call her for a heads up on like the odds of this baby coming out early to support my fade, but not even a reason why I'm fading him. Just the weather, the wind, everything, the price. And I'm in on Jon Rahm, man. I love Jon Rahm. I think 11.2, $900 less than Jon Rahm. I'm okay praying that, again, Scotty's ownership. What do you have? I see like 29 to 33 from the sources I use. So, and Jon Rahm at 14. What do you have for Jon Rahm?
I'm always a little bit low on those high-end golfers of ownership. I have 28% for Scotty Scheffler. I have 16% for Jon Rahm.
I'll take the under on Jon Rahm. I don't think that many people play him. I'm all for it. I just trust that guy. I think even more so. Like, he's been probably dying for true competition. You'd assume he's kind of like a villain this year, right? I know he's Champions Dinner and all that, but he's wearing his Live logo and everything, team logo on his stuff. But that's the route I went. Right now, I'm going Rahm and Rory, taking out Scotty Scheffler. Undecided on Brooks Koepka. I feel like he's a little, like, you can't even say he's overpriced. The major resume speaks for itself. What are your thoughts on Brooks Koepka? Because I know you're all in on Rory for the most part, right? And sounds like you're cool with Rahm. Thoughts on Scotty and thoughts on Brooks?
I was under the assumption that on a Win Daily podcast, and this will not be something that I am sure it'll go a little bit over your head, Nick. I'll explain it later, but
sure, yeah, go ahead.
I wasn't aware on a Win Daily podcast that you were allowed to fade Scotty Scheffler. So,
I've been doing it all year. It hasn't been great, but it's the couple times I've done it, it's worked out all right. But more times than not, it has not.
So let's touch on those 4 players really quickly. I'll start with Scotty Scheffler. Massive ownership, like you've talked about. It's not even the ownership game that worries me. And I've kind of been making this argument all week, and I alluded to it yesterday on Links and Locks when I wanted to have this Scotty Scheffler discussion. The prices go down to $6,000 this week. It's no longer this $5,000 basement barrel where you had real made cut equity and real top 20 potential on those Max Grazermans and the Jacob Bridgemans and all those names. When you start with Scotty Scheffler, I've just realized this from a game theory perspective when I started trying to put together lineups here. when you start with Scotty Scheffler at $12,100, you get into this very specific build to where you're not able to go Scotty and Rory will use. We'll use Rory as that example.
You're, like the best you could do is Xander, and I think as ownership projections share, like that is what optimizers are going to be spitting out, and that is what hand builds are going to be spitting out. Is like can't afford Brooks, can't afford Rory, can't afford Rahm with Scotty. So Xander, great spot. Every single book in the world absolutely loves him. Seems like he's a 50-point favorite over the whole world right now, besides Scotty. And I think, like, even me, like, when I'm just looking at cash game builds, I don't think I'll probably even use Scotty and cash just because I want the money for other guys. But Scotty and Xander seem to be, like, the first two obvious clicks. So
yeah, it's such a specific way that lineups end up forming. And if you look at ownership, like, even if you start with, let's just say you start with Scotty and Xander, which is going to be very popular, you're down to $7,000 for your average price that you can pay over those last four players. I think, and I keep going back to this game theory answer here, we run into a problem to where Augusta National has the most predictive course history of any event on tour. I really think in some of these large field contests, we're going to run into the situation to where even if Scotty Scheffler ends up winning, I don't think it's going to be the optimal route having Scotty into your builds, because Scotty starts forcing you into the $6,000 range. I'm a little bit afraid that you cannot find enough players down there that actually make sense that are going to produce top tens. Yeah. We can have the argument about Rory. You know, I don't like the subjective nature of some of these arguments with Rory where he cannot win. I think when you start talking in absolutes, and this is more of a betting answer than anything else, when you start talking in absolutes, you're looking at it the wrong way. I think for DFS, it's going to drive down the ownership partially. I love Rory this week. You kind of alluded to me being all in on him, and this is an every Masters conversation, but it's just the public perception has gone far too in one direction here. And then
that's awesome. Honestly, dude, the shitty thing about these is, like, okay, one, if you've been around our show for a while, sometimes Spencer can make the show go a lot longer than we usually plan it pre-show. And I could obviously get on my rants too, so no offense, Spencer. I just like to make that joke with you. But my headphones die. Like, they died on the Action Network podcast the other day, and I had to, like, plug it back in for, like, a minute and then back to the thing and, like, throw it back in. And you guys asked me a question on air, and I couldn't hear anything. So hopefully the producer cut that part. But, yeah, it's not all they're cracked up to be. So, Apple, if you could make extended battery life on these things, that'd be fantastic. But, yes, carry on. Sorry. Great comment.
I think the public perception, though, has gone too far. Like, even if we look at Scotty versus Rahm, Scotty's 5-1, Rahm is 12-1, give or take on those numbers. I don't think the difference between those two golfers is that much. We've gotten stuck into this narrative. I agree with you, Nick. This isn't a situation his wife is due in 3 weeks. Obviously, obviously anything can happen. Like, I think you're making up reasons to try to fade him, but I just think from a structural standpoint of these lineups, you really start backing yourself into a corner. And when you look at the lineups of Scotty, they're going to consistently land under the same exact names. It's going to be Scotty with Sahith, Scotty with Connors and Henley, and we're just going to keep building the same lineup over and over again. And that is not what I'm trying to do specifically for these major championships where we have a reduced field. So I am in on Rory. I am in on Rahm. I am not a Brooks Koepka person. At the end of the day, I always think he garners a little bit too much ownership.
I see 10%.
I see 14, but I mean, we're somewhat sort of splitting hairs. I mean, I guess 4% is a big difference in that range, but I don't know, Nick. I'm not a Koepka guy. Like, it's these built-in narratives that I keep talking about. The built-in narrative that Rory cannot win, the built-in narrative that Scotty is unbeatable, the built-in narrative that we get with Brooks Koepka at major championships because of how great and how much he wants to win these events. Like, when you have built-in narratives, you have inconsistencies with the market.
For sure. And I did just read, I put it in the chat here, guys. I know it's promoting another website, but whatever. This is Spencer's work, so that is what I promote. The 7 Deadly Sins at Augusta. A great article. Spencer writes it every single year. Has anybody ever won since you've been writing this? I'm sure Danny Willett probably wouldn't have checked the boxes the year he won, but this is pretty much like year after year after year what holds true. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that fit the mold I'm excited to talk about one of them here in a minute that no one's going to play. I don't even know if I want to play him, but I'm excited to talk about him. But yeah, check out that article I put in here. It's awesome. And Brooks Koepka, I believe, checked every single box besides the around the green play. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the one thing I will say about any of these live golfers that got removed from the list, it's limited sample size of data that I have. Like, we don't have recent statistics, which worry me ever so slightly. I've done this article. This will be the 6th year I've done it. It's gone 5 for 5 in the first 5 of putting it together.
This guy's cracking me up. Noren, let's move past the Noren debacle. It was a sharp play. We were a year early. I know he's not in the field now, but now he's balling out. So we saw it coming.
I'm very thankful that Noren's not in this field, because the Masters every single year, just when we're looking at the same statistics, my cards are almost carbon copies, which from a matchup betting perspective has been great. From an outright betting perspective has not been as great with it. I mean, there's a lot of Rorys on the card. There's always Xander. Usually Patrick Cantlay sneaks his way into it. So
a little Finau in there too. Why not? For good measure.
I like Finau a lot this week for DFS, but I do think that there are, that article that you talked about, Nick, there's essentially 7 deadly sins that you cannot do if you actually want to capture this title. The live guys, we could make an argument of Dustin's another one that barely got eliminated from one of the categories there. So take the live guys with a grain of salt with it. But for the most part, that article has been pretty spot on and actually indicating who the winner is going to be.
Yeah, that's why I'm in between on Dust or on Brooks when I read. It's like, the around the green. I get it that the data you're pulling and where it's coming from. So it's like he was fantastic short game at the U.S. Open, fantastic at the PGA Championship. Obviously, he had to have strokes gained pretty much everywhere to win a major. That's the way, especially in America when it's set up that way. And lost strokes around the green a little bit last year when he was tied for second. And that was pretty much the majority on Sunday, right? I want to say his short game leading up to it. Let me see if I can get that round by round. No, round 1 was pretty bad around the green. Round 2, bad around the green. Round 3, fantastic around the green. Round 4, went way sideways. So I don't know. I think maybe the predictability of being able to have such a good short game at this course means a lot. So I was kind of looking for a reason to get out on Brooks. If it's 10%, I think I'm still interested, but I just really want to jam in like 3x a field, Jon Rahm, 2x to maybe 3x the field on Rory too, because I do think I could play Jon Rahm and Rory McIlroy and still get a different build from the same mid-tier Henleys, Thiegs, all those guys that you talked about earlier when you're building, with Scotty Scheffler and potentially a Brooks or a Xander Schauffele or whatever. But all right, let's move on to 9K range. Let me tell you who's out of my pool. As of now, Wyndham Clark's out also in the 10K range. Do you have any thoughts on Wyndham? Are you okay with it? Like, this is just my player pool. So if you guys got questions, by all means, we should have started with that. Like, ask all the questions you want. I'd rather be interactive with you guys than just tell you what I'm personally doing. But right now, Wyndham's out of my player pool. Would you rather have Wyndham or would you rather have Brooks? Or neither?
Here's the thing with Brooks. I usually dislike Brooks to the max in these spots because high price tag, high ownership. We get a high price tag here. We don't necessarily get that massively high ownership. So I do think of all the spots that we've gotten for Brooks in a while, this is probably a little bit better, but I don't know, Nick. I think it's close. To me, it's 50-50. The thing with Wyndham Clark is this first time narrative and him having the wrong shot shape is kind of pushing people off of him. I don't know if I'm as worried about that with Wyndham. Like, I made this argument on Links and Locks yesterday. You take Wyndham, you take Oberg. That is the best 2 first-time golfers at this stage of their career that we have gotten in a really long time. So I'm kind of willing to ignore some of the market movement on what we have with Clark here. My upside numbers really liked him. I think if you're shooting for that upside in GPP contests, I'm okay going that route, and I'm okay considering Brooks also. It's just, for me, it keeps going back to the answer that you've given. I want to be massively overweight to Rahm and Rory, and by doing so, it's pushing a lot of these other players at least a little bit down the board for me.
Yeah, I think I could sleep at night knowing I'm not playing Wyndham Clark. 9K range, All right. Fade number 2. Hideki's out. For me, Will Zalatoris and Victor Hovland, who I know I have an outright ticket on. I think he's getting steamed a little too much. I don't understand. I thought he'd be like 5% owned because like sketchy form. He's been very vocal about his game not being in the right place. Said that he's always been working on is trying to find his, his long irons and hasn't worked on his short game, which I think is probably a good thing for him. Like just be great at what you're great at. I don't think you have to force short game down your throat. If you, hit your 4-iron like people hit their 8-iron, like the proximity speaking, like that's what he was doing at last year when he was ripping up the BMW championship at a very tough course on bent grass. So like I wanted to play him. Is that a bad idea? I have room for Victor Hovland, but it's how much I like Xander, which sucks. I am going to play some chalk. I'm not just going to come on the show and be like, hey, fade all the chalk. Like I'm maxing out the Millie Maker. So I do want to get a little bit different. Hideki, there is no way in the world, like there's anything on paper that says you could fade him, right? Like in my head, it's like, oh, I hope he, one of those injuries pops up and he doesn't hit the ball very well. But even then, like he is in such good form, great course history. I see 28% ownership at 9K, and I just chose Jordan Spieth. At the moment, he sketches me out a little bit, but I love Jordy. Ludwig, I talked about Joe Scavron and my respect for him, especially, coming with Tom Kim last year, who's, like you said, Ludwig and Wyndham are the best debutantes that we've seen in our era for probably ever, right? In terms of like proven consistency. We have the strokes gain data now to like kind of back that up. I'd rather have Ludwig. I'd rather have Jordy. I'd rather have some guys in the AK range we'll talk about in a minute. So I don't know what to do with. I think no matter what you say, I'm fading Hideki. Will Zalatoris, I miss the distance that he was bringing off the tee. I think maybe that's the only difference. Obviously, 2 top 10s and 2 tries here. So the course history box is certainly checked, but Victor Hovland scares me to fade just because how much the market loves him.
Did you see? I texted you this before I officially recommended the bet.
We'll talk about the German Hammer.
Yeah, Jaeger's an interesting discussion. I mentioned to you I released the play over at Rotoballer. I ended up going with Victor Hovland over Justin Thomas. We've destroyed that line. It's moved like 40-something points at
time for me to go on the other side now.
No, I mean I'm so out on Justin Thomas this week.
I don't get it.
I know
I get it, but I also don't.
We'll get to the Justin Thomas discussion in a second. I guess the one thing with Hovland, I do think that ownership is going to continue to decrease over the next decrease.
For Victor, I've seen it continuously go up. I say 12%, which isn't bad. What do you have?
Here's why I think it's going to decrease, at least in my opinion. I've seen this clip circulating over the past couple hours from the par 3 contest today. And he was asked, how does he feel about his game? And he's kind of given this answer over and over again. And he was like, I have felt better about it before. We will see tomorrow. Things can change. But as of this moment, I don't know. It doesn't feel great.
And the reason I kind of want to fade it is because he's never lied about it. When he said he doesn't feel good, he hasn't scored well. Like the iron play's kind of there. It's not where it's like when I was kind of contemplating Henley a couple weeks ago. It's like, okay, you look at his player profile and every single week he's getting multiple strokes approach. Victor Hovland obviously is that type of player as well. I'm not seeing that the last 3 times out. API, I think he was playing well and maybe had a bad weekend. Players Championship, we've talked about how volatile that tournament is, and pretty much that data means nothing to us ever for the most part. So I don't know. I trust to believe him, and I just don't get. I thought the steam was going to go upwards. What's the ownership number you have?
So I had it at 12% almost the entire day,
okay.
and now I'm at around 10%. So I've lost about 2% in the past maybe 5 or 6 hours or so since those comments kind of started circulating out there. So I don't know. To me, this is one of those plays that if it is a sub 10% Victor Hovland, you have to know what you're getting involved with here with the volatility that he's going to bring to the mix. But from just straight a statistical perspective, and this is coming from somebody who runs the data a little bit longer than most people, my math does like him. I think he is a fair price when he's in form, and I think he's a little bit overpriced right now with where he's at. But I think at the right ownership percentage, there is still the potential to create leverage with this play. Like if he's sub 10%, him, Wyndham Clark, we could have the Patrick Cantlay discussion, but like to me, those are the golfers that are at least generating some of that leverage. I'm not playing necessarily every single one of those names, but I do think it's worth considering one of those options or two of those options and potentially putting them into play.
Okay. Well, my decision is I kind of want to play Patrick Cantlay instead.
I mean, I get it.
And there's no reason to play Patrick Cantlay and Victor Hovland. Maybe the same. I mean, Victor Hovland, if you just want to go strokes gained in majors, has lit it up for the last 3 years for the most part. Definitely the last 2. Holy shit, looking at those finishes. But
I will say this.
Cantlay or Hovland, pick one. DFS.
I understand my article when it narrowed it down to 9 had Cantlay in there and Hovland didn't make it. But I also think when we're talking about win equity and Patrick Cantlay doesn't seem to win golf tournaments, and we're also not necessarily needing a victory here with this. I like Victor Hovland more than Patrick Cantlay. Like my model had him better on an overall rank and had him better on an upside total with it. So
I'll put in Vic. I'll take out Cantlay. I will not hold this against you if it goes wrong. This is on air live, so you have proof. Send that to the legal team. Cantlay in or out. Victor in. And I have Victor outright at 40-1, so like I'd be okay to root for him. I trust him when he says he doesn't like his game.
There's something to that, definitely, and I think that's why the ownership will go down. But these golfers are very it doesn't take much to they all of a sudden find something and they're back in form. And the around the green stuff with Hovland is scary. The numbers there have been just a disaster. I still tend to believe that some of the ball striking totals are maybe not as bad as public perception. It's been a shot here and there in a lot of spots for him. He hasn't necessarily popped in the areas that you would want to see, but even when I incorporated more of the 2024 stats, and that's one of the things that I try to do for these major championships is there's a lot of pressure during these events. I want to see who's in the best form over a shorter duration of time because that's not how I run my model for the most part. And Victor Hovland didn't experience as big of a decrease as you would expect. He did downshift a little bit, but you know, it comes back to me the sub 10% option that you have an outright ticket. And I know it's not directly correlated, Nick, but you have an outright ticket on him. You like him more than the general public. And even you want to get out for DFS. Like that kind of to me is where there's the potential to be different. And just if we look at this $9,000 range, the ways that you get different, I guess I'll even include Wyndham Clark. It's Clark, Cantlay, and Hovland. Everybody else is going to be pretty popular. And I do think Oberg provides a middle of that answer. Like he's not going to be as popular as the Niemans of the world, but it's that first time narrative that comes into play for Oberg where I don't really care if we're being honest. You've talked about having a caddy on the bag that has a bunch of experience. If you want to give me the answer,
good experience, by the way.
Yes, great experience there. If you want to give me the answer that historically, and if this is the reason why you're, and I think this even, Nick, like is a great answer to be had about Rory here, not to move back up in the section and have your earpods or AirPods die on you.
Here we go. This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we just moved back up in this section at some point. But like, if the narrative on Rory comes down to this answer of he cannot win because of a mental state or the pressure.
Yeah,
those are
are
the answers I do not care about. If you have a real statistical answer that you can give me on it, like for Oberg, he has historically not been as great on some of these longer courses. These club down spots have been better for him. If that is the reasoning why you don't want to play Oberg, I can get behind that a little bit, but I also think that you add that with what everybody's saying to this first time answer, all of a sudden Oberg gets this potential to, in my opinion, really provide. We have seen first time participants inside of the top 10 of the leaderboard all the time.
Yeah, Willsey got second, did he?
Yeah, I mean, guys like him and Spieth, like there are names that can really pop here. Oberg's game is beautiful for this course.
These two savages. I love it. All right. What are your thoughts on Jocko? And I can't find a reason to fade him. Guy, I think he's just in the prime of his career. He's sub 10K. Ownership's 15-ish. I don't love that, but I've always liked him ever since the Genesis ticket was special to me. And him going to live didn't really hurt my feelings as much as some of these other guys. I don't know why, but I just think he's really good at golf right now, and his swing's in a good spot and knows the track. Good.
I've made the argument a couple times this week that if he would have stayed on the PGA Tour, we might have a completely different perception of him. And I think the market has corrected itself from, I know we didn't know if he was going to be in the field, but it's also, once he got in the field, corrected itself into the sub 30-1 numbers. And I don't necessarily see value from an outright ticket with the movement that we're talking about there. But I do think that if he was on the PGA Tour, there's a legitimate argument to be made that we might be viewing him as a top 5 sort of golfer in the world. And I don't, that's not necessarily something that you see every single day just because he's at live or on live. And if you want to call it an exhibition or whatever it is, it's just not in the public eye every single day. So I don't have a reason to fade Niemann either. My model really liked him more so than I even thought it would when I was using some older stats on him that would make him like 23, 24. He's a better player now than the numbers I even have.
Love it. All right, let's hit a question here. Doing a pick and pool. Need your advice on tier 5. Is it just one? Keegan, Taylor, Kirk, Struck. I'm assuming, unless you can give us more data here, I'm assuming just pick one. Shit. Not Tiger, not Tom Kim for me. That's my thoughts on Tom Kim. I know Max asked that question. Hard pass. I think his game's in a bad place. Market absolutely hates him. I don't like the market to dictate my decisions. My numbers hated him too. I don't know if you feel any differently. Spencer, definitely out on Eric Cole. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Højgaard, out on McCarthy, out on Sepp. Don't hate Kirk. Honestly, my favorite answer here is Keegan. But that's the DFS in me when I see him at 3% ownership and comes back to a track he's been decent on. Price, like he just needs to be decent on too.
I've done so many shows this week. I think it was with Byron, but I don't know. I don't know if I said this with you, Nick, but Paul Tesori follows us.
Yeah, I know. Get him on the show, Paul. Come on. What do you do? Paul's probably watching right now.
Yeah, we need to get Paul on in a little bit. And so Paul Tesori's on Tom Kim's bag for the Masters here. And I saw last week, and this was the reason that just took me off of him completely. He wrote a mental health coach or whoever the woman was with it to like have him and Tom Kim last week go meet with her to get a couple things corrected there. I don't want somebody that is so lost that they need to go see somebody to go get corrections there. Like, I think Tom is struggling with his game for whatever reason right now, and he's trying to find a solution. And we've seen those types of answers work for Homa and Wyndham Clark, but I don't know if it's the immediate answer and the immediate solution that comes into play. So, I'm going to be out for that. I agree. No to Tiger. I can't guarantee that Tiger is going to get through 4 rounds, even if he makes the cut. No for me on Taylor. No for me on Straka. I know market seem to really like McCarthy. Probably not. For
they
me.
Do. That's nuts. Yeah, I'm a hard pass.
It would be Keegan, Højgaard, or Jaeger.
Yep. I would probably grade it Keegan, Jaeger, Højgaard.
I think Højgaard has a lot more volatility, which would scare me. So I'd probably put him third of the mix. I would say Jaeger and Bradley are a coin flip.
Nice. All right. Let's move on to the 8K range. Who did I take out so far? Took out Cam Smith. I don't think we need to comment on that. Dustin Johnson, Morikawa. I did take out Bryson. I see way too much steam on him. I thought I'd be all over him when I opened up Monday and saw like 4 to 5%. But again, those ownership projections will be shit on Monday or Tuesday. And I took out Shane Lowry, 18%. So I have Justin Thomas, who you hate. We don't have to talk about him. Pretty much talked about him on Action Network. I think the ball striking, and I said it earlier in the year that he was going to have a fantastic year and get a major again. I'm going to ride Justin Thomas. The putter's broken. And then his broken putter is broken again. So that thing's cut in like 4s, right? If you broke a putter, they cut in 2. It'd be 4 pieces. Good math there. Obviously playing Tony Finau. It's me. Cameron Young, I'm starting to hate the ownership. I have Max Homa in and I have Sam Burns in. Do you hate any of the fades of Brian Harmon? Oh, shit. That's 7K range, but I'm fading Brian Harmon. Imagine that. Shane Lowry, Bryson, Morikawa, Dustin, and Cam Smith.
Surprisingly, Nick, I don't hate Cameron Smith.
Really?
I know markets are going to push everything in that direction, but
I would play him.
I just think I feel very not safe going this route. And I think that's what you're signing up for. But
hell yeah. If you can get a sub 10% guy, I mean, shit, what's your ownership on him? I see like 6.
Sub 10%. It's the overcorrection to the market of him pulling out because of food poisoning. To me,
hasn't he also sucked this year?
He's been bad, but that's the thing. It's like, what is bad on the
T2 at Hong Kong? Isn't that course super, super, super short? Paul Casey was T2. It had to be pretty short, but no offense to Paul. I'm surprised he didn't withdraw.
I kind of like Cameron Smith. I kind of like Dustin Johnson. I'm not necessarily out on those two. I think every other.
I love Dusty too as a golfer. All right, Cam Smith, get back in there for a minute. You're not making this easy to get to 35 when I get
Do you want to make a friendly, just a friendly wager? There doesn't even need to be anything on it. I will say that Matthew Fitzpatrick has a better finish than Justin Thomas.
All right, yeah, give me that. I'll take it. Writing it down. JT over Fitz. I win 1,000. I risk 10. Is that what you said?
I mean, something like that can work. We can work out the specifics later on, but I don't know, Nick. I mean, I've given you, like, we don't need to go on it through the show here. The only thing I will say is I worry about Justin Thomas's putter here. I get
that. That's
and
fine.
It's not even.
It's an assumed risk for me.
Sure, and it's not even just that answer. It's also the weighted proximity. So it's like that double whammy that he throws into the mix, that the approach numbers for me are subpar, and then you give him a putter that's even worse there. Kind of feel like he's going to miss the cut. Maybe I'm on my own island on this sense, but like that's the answer I've been giving, like whether it's Cameron Young or Victor Hovland, or I don't even like Colin Morikawa. Like I was trying to find any way I could to take on. I think Tony Finau was a really good way to do it before that number moved up a little bit. And like what Zach said, I think a lot of people are going to play Justin Thomas, and just because my math says that doesn't mean that it's right. There's a lot of weeks where I'm lower on players, and Thomas always has the potential to pop. That's his ace in the hole, where he can just pull it out at any single moment, and there's upside for him to win this tournament. I just don't think, like, for me, 100-1 was the argument I made of the proper price on him. Like those 60s are not even value for me of what we're looking at. But
what did I have him at? Because I bet 57-1 at Circa. Because my numbers said that was a mispriced, but my numbers like Justin Thomas, obviously. I have him at 38-1, dude. Something's way off it. I don't like being that far away from you. I don't care if we disagree on some players. I don't like being in a whole different planet.
We're usually not that different on our numbers, which is the interesting one there. I mean, one of us will probably end up being very correct. It's like Thomas is either going to top 10 this tournament or he's going to miss the cut in horrific fashion. I lean towards my end, obviously, because of my numbers. But look, if you want to play him at the end of the day, there's not some exorbitant amount of ownership around him. There's an upside that we know about. I always thought years ago that the Masters was the prototypical tournament for him, like the ideal setup for him to find that high-end success, because he could spray the ball off the tee a little bit and he had the short game to get up and down on any of those shots. So if the irons turn around for him, and if your numbers believe that the irons have turned around, then yeah, the upside is there with it. But I'm fine for the most part, probably fading Lowry. I think the ownership has just run a little bit too crazy there. I never like these spots where the safety numbers are better than the upside numbers. Those are like cash game plays. I say this every single week on the show, but same answer there. And I think the Burns and Homa play, I like them. Like these are high.
I didn't think you'd like Burns. I knew you like Homa, and I'm gonna ride Homa, sub 10% Homa. I'm looking for guys to get top 5 it. And I think Cam Smith, now you talk about it, and in theory too, if I'm fading that high ownership of Hideki, I probably shouldn't push all in on debutant Ludwig because that's probably where my optimizer is going to go. And it's going to go more towards JT because that's all I had in that gapping just above 9K and just below 9K was Justin Thomas and Ludwig. So adding Cam Smith makes a lot of sense. I'm okay with that.
I like the Burns and Homa play too, just to kind of touch on that. To me, they are low owned, high upside plays where the safety is maybe subpar compared to a lot of these names that we're talking about. But the positive upside climbers in my model in this $8,000 range would be Burns, Homa. I guess it'd be those two, and then like Cam Smith would be neutral. So like that's a very fair value for where I have him, and Finau would be more or less neutral. And I think Finau just happens to be one of the best plays on the board where he's safe in both upside markets and safety markets.
Rock on. Tony Finau, we love. We don't need to talk about him on the show like we do every single week. All right. Is there any fade? Yeah, are you fine with fading Bryson? I know Shane Lowry, like when I just looked at his ownership, it's like he doesn't scare me. I think the safety's there. Someone I consider in cash games, but other than that, I'm good.
The around the green stuff for DeChambeau is very worrisome. I give the same answer as you do, by the way, like Data Golf, PGA Tour, Fantasy National. Those are the three places I'm using to pull statistics. So I just think like at some point Bryson will probably figure this out, but I would rather like figure it out the first time and then we'll have the conversation the next go around with it.
I dig it. Cameron Young, keep him.
I'm indifferent, Nick.
That's where I'm at too. The ownership's a little crazy. What do you have? I see 14.
I have 14. I think based off,
he's just vibing.
Yeah, based off of that answer, like the three worst ownership versus model discrepancies I would have would be Zalatoris, Thomas, and Cameron Young. But I also think that unlike a lot of those other options, for me, Cameron Young makes a lot of sense, like for the way I am trying to build lineups. So I'm indifferent on him. You could sell me either direction. If I'm trying to cut somebody and I'm in a spot where I need a name removed, I'm fine removing him. But it's like that conversation that we had yesterday on Action Network. I was trying to bet him in a head-to-head matchup against Justin Thomas. So I'm obviously in the spot where I'm indifferent to the situation.
Cool. All right. And then one thing about Victor Hovland going back up, everybody shits on people that fade the golf ball. Obviously John Rahm does, but I think he can work it both ways. Victor Hovland hits a pull cut. So why does no one talk about that? But I don't know. 7K range. You love Fitz. We'll leave it at that. I am going to follow you on that one. I like him as a player. I have no problem rooting for him. I took out Tyrrell Hatton, Brian Harmon. We're not going to talk about Brian Harmon. Took out Tom Kim, Patrick Reed. I saw close to 15% ownership. I get the course history. I personally can't stand rooting for Patrick Reed, so that's like more of me playing with my heart than data. Even I can't get good data on him. Midwoo Lee. I took out Akshay. Took out Justin Rose, who I'm starting to be interested in, and I took out our boy Siwoo Kim. So, I kind of want to take out Russ too. I just don't feel like the Millie Maker. Like I'm building a lineup, so hopefully, obviously we all want to win the Millionaire Maker someday, but I just don't see Siwoo being in it. I'm starting to not see Russell Henley being in it. He's just so cheap. He makes so much sense. Course history is there. Coming off a great finish. Valero, he's like too cheap to where it's like at this point you just got to fade on principle. But I love Russ, so I don't know.
As safe as he has been at this tournament, and he's been very good. I mean, if you remove last year's finish of fourth place,
it's been nothing. Yeah,
there's good finishes, but it's just a lot of made cuts is what we're looking at the end of the day. So I don't know. From an ownership standpoint, I understand that. I do think there's a lot of players in this $7,000 range that, like, if we're talking purely who are the worst values that I have in my model.
He's cracking me up.
Who are the worst values I have in my model? Like, a lot of these players in the $7,000 range are the names that land there. It would be Phil Mickelson. It would be Sung Jae Im. Shockingly, it would be Brian Harmon. Like it's
just took me 4 years to convince you.
Justin Rose, although Justin Rose does have some upside numbers in my model. So I would be a little bit more cautious in that sense with it.
He's just, to me, like Sanjay, just broken.
I would agree with that. I mean, and then for
what
the
are we
most,
doing with Thiegs? I have a source that has 18%. I have one that's 23%. And my aggregates that I pull would be 17.
My aggregates that I pull would be 16.
Like, I kind of just want to fade. I don't think I could fade all. Like, okay, the chalk in this price range is Theegala, Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Siwoo Kim. Because of how you open the show talking about the Scotty builds that it kind of creates, those are the guys that feel the most safe, also have a little bit of upside, as Russell showed last week or last year. But I don't think I could fade Connors. I think he actually has some upside. I don't want to say Russ doesn't, but again, I don't think Russ is like, you're playing him to make the cut. I just don't think that's an MME type of move. I think that's a fine single entry move. I think that's a fine cash game move. Theegala, I actually think has upside. So that's why I kept him in, but his ownership is wanting me to get off.
Here's the thing, Nick. If you remove Scotty Scheffler from your build,
I did.
I think you all of a sudden already get different enough in the way that you're going about this, that now all of a sudden you have different dependencies that are outside of these. Like, you're going to have Rahm and Rory and Theegala versus the Scheffler and Theegala answers that are going to come into play. I think the ownership's fine on Theegala. I don't have a problem with him. You could sell me on the argument that Russell Henley is lacking the upside needed for the ownership that you have to pay. I have no problem with that answer. I guess for me,
my question, sorry to cut you off. And again, anybody that's new, I cut off Spencer all the time. That's what our show is. But with Russ, so again, when I take someone out, I kind of want to justify it and who's around them. I am going to play Ricky Fowler. I know this is before I just found out like an hour ago he won the par 3 contest. Don't matter. I don't care about that at all. I think
it's another narrative. We're just throwing narratives that don't matter, like they don't matter into the mix.
Yeah, that means nothing to me. If anything, I think I'm mad about that because it may raise his own. I need a 1% guy, which I still need you to give me on the show sometime. Maybe we get there in a bit. But okay, Ricky's kind of broken too, but I don't know. He's good here. He hasn't played here in a while. What's it been? When did he lose his Masters eligibility? 2021? Before that, but he lights his place up. He top 10s often. Maybe just getting back to Augusta, getting back with the boys at a major. I don't know. Yeah, 2020 is the last time we played. The COVID one, so that was November.
As much
his
as
game was in terrible shape then too, and he comes out and gets T29, which I think at this price and that ownership would be useful to me. And so it's if I take out Russ, I like Jaeger, I like Adam Scott, and I like Harris English. I think all 4 of those guys, again, not much faith in Ricky Fowler, but I don't need to have a lot of faith. If he does close at 2% ownership and I have 6, I like to go 3x almost everybody. I'm okay with that.
See, to me, Nick,
just 2 of them go beat Russ. And I think we have, obviously, if Russ tops 10s, then I'm probably fucked. But maybe I don't need to take out Russ because, again, the reason you said earlier, I'm already different, that Scotty's not going to be with those guys.
I think you may have answered the question, though. Regardless of if Russ stays or if Russ goes in this situation, it's those options like Harris English, Jaeger, Adam Scott. When I run my numbers and I put them into head-to-head matchups against each other to try to figure out where my price would be, that entire group is within 10, 15 points of each other, one direction or another. I think you're looking at spots there where they're virtually 50-50 options, to where if I can get a little bit different with my build, and I don't think that Henley necessarily has the upside numbers, he's another one of those very classic answers that we keep talking about. 32nd overall for me, 53rd for upside. The safety number goes inside the top 25. That safety number is what's saving him because of some of those Masters results he has and what he has produced recently. But it's not like my math believes that he has this massive ceiling that comes into play. I do think the 4th place last year really starts enticing people because of this profile that we've seen. And I'm a really big Russell Henley supporter. I probably back him more than most people do, but
Guilty as well.
Yeah, I don't see this huge difference between him and Scott. And I kind of tend to think English is even I don't want to say a better value than those names, but I do think in the betting market, he became such. I think for DFS, it's very similar.
Okay. That is a great answer that I did want to hear. Sounds like I'm starting to lean Russ out. Do you have Connors as a favorite over all those guys by a significant margin at least?
No, I mean, honestly, I think Connors is in that mix too. But like the answer with that is, Nick, like if we're looking at Connors, Henley, and Thagala, I feel like if you get rid of Scotty, you can keep two.
Okay.
I think you're fine going that route. And it's probably, for me, Henley would be the one that I would be most inclined of the three to want to get off of. Thagala's not like Thagala broke my model this week. I had to regress statistics from him to kind of get him out of like the really high end ranges. So I didn't have this win equity total from him that was going to just like completely break the sheet. But yeah, I mean, I have Connors a little bit above Henley just because while he does have a little bit of that negative movement that I'm talking about, it's much more flat. Like Henley is the one who plummets off the face of the earth on some of these categories that I ran.
Okay. I think I'm leaning Henley out.
By the way, before we move forward, I saw, yes.
Yeah, I was like, you came to the wrong show.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the support group for this. Like, I think Nick and I might be the leaders of
yeah, jump. Yeah, dude.
I'll jump with you on that one.
Yeah, we both think Rory. I don't know if I think John Rahm's my first pick, but Rory would probably be my second. Yeah. I'm standing by Ludwig, man. I think he's going to ball out. I don't think he can win, but I think he top tens. But the price was terrible. Taylor Moore versus Harris English. Price doesn't matter. Harris English for me. He's hit the ball long too. Like he hasn't been healthy in a long time. The past couple of years, I think he's fully healthy, ready to go. Does very well in these hard conditions. I think he's a Georgia guy too. At least he talks like he's from Georgia. No offense if you guys are from Georgia here. I love the accent. Fred Couples will have low ownership. I knew we'd get a Fred Couples.
I don't dislike Taylor Moore, and I think when I give that Harris English answer, that even pushes like more in the direction of how strongly I feel about Harris English this week. Taylor Moore was great last year at the Masters. That finish that he provided, he blew up on Sunday.
Yeah,
like that should have been a lot better. If all of a sudden he doesn't blow up, we could be in this position to where, I mean, if he finished top 20, I mean, who knows what his price would have been in the market. The market already likes him in a lot of spots.
All right. Anybody in the 7K range I took out that we should talk about? Phil, no, Siwoo. Are you fine with Siwoo being out?
I'm starting to lean that way, and it's not where I initially was.
Russ or Siwoo, or both out. Again, video evidence. I won't hold this against you.
I'll say Siwoo over Russell.
Oh, God damn it. That makes me feel better though. At least like we're Siwoo guys. We're also Russ guys. That's what hurts. Siwoo
There's a lot of the trending data for Siwoo that is phenomenal.
Okay. Yeah, Russ doesn't scare me. All right, let me put Siwoo back in. Son of a bitch. I just feel like I want to ride those other 7K guys and just see what happens. But again, like you said, I'm different already. And thoughts on Nick Taylor at all? I just feel like the iron plays so well. He's going to putt, scramble a little bit. He has scored well on long courses. I don't get why the market hates him, like absolutely hates him. But, in terms of
my model thinks he should be exactly $7,000. It thinks he should be in this range where he's like 135 to 1. So I think based off of that answer, I kind of sort of like him at the ownership.
What do you have? I have 3.
I have 4.
Okay. All right. 6K range. I have Cameron Davis in. I have Tiger Woods in because I'm American. No offense, Byron. But if Tiger's 2%, whatever. I'll play 5-6%. And if it happens, I don't see it happening. I want to take him out. I think it's dumb money, but it's Tiger. I play with my heart a little bit. Would not recommend doing the same. Ben on, Keegan Bradley, Jake Knapp, Hadwin, Taylor Moore, Kitayama, Eckroat. Got a couple of the amateurs in right now. I'm probably going to take all of them out. TBD on Moronk. I think his ball striking, that I've pulled, but again, the live data kind of throws a lot of this off. But I was watching him last week intently because I did want to play him. I worry about his around the green play. But I think like he was a guy that was always a long hitter that was missing iron play, and he's kind of found that. So I'm okay with Moronk. But Ben on, I thought he was going to be 1% owned. Byron's every 10 minutes. I'm sorry, man. Bad show for you. But Ben on's ownership starting to leave the station. And I think the bets I made, what was his top 20? I would have 280. Is that what it was?
I believe is what you said. Yeah.
That is gone. Hey, I could pay my bills in CLV. Love that. I will call whoever I pay from. Oh, and then top 10 still at 750. I just think that it's one of the better ball strikers we've seen on tour this year. I've talked about it on Action. Just check it out, Action. But I like Ben on, but now his ownership's like 8%. Kind of don't want to play anybody that's over 5% in this range, but I need a 1%er. Cameron Davis, I'm starting to see trend down to that range. I have gotten him wrong every single time I've ever played him ever. So do I just stay with it and say that the trend has to hit eventually, or do we get out? I just trust his game, like his ability. I wouldn't say I trust his game. I would have loved if Davis Thompson could have qualified over Cameron Davis. I'd rather play him. But anybody you don't like in that range, and then let me see the ownership in the 6K range. Honestly, I thought that most of it's going to go to Taylor Moore, and I can't find a reason to fade him. Chris Kirk's kind of up there. Sergio Garcia, no fucking way I'm playing him. He's like 7-8%. Anybody you really like in the 6K range? We don't need to talk about everybody, but
I think
anybody you hate.
Well, I mean, I think you named most of the golfers that I'm on myself. Like Eckroat is a name I'm going to be massively over with my exposure here. Like I talked about him making the cut. That was a wager that I put out. I think this is a really nice spot for him where I thought he was the best value on the board. I don't like the Chris Kirk ownership. That would be the pushback, I guess, in that direction. Like I took him against Eric Van Rooyen. I'm fine getting my exposure that way.
Hates
that market, that price is gone. Unfortunately, that's moved like 30, 40 points. But like the upside of Højgaard, that's an every week answer. I can't seem to be on the right side of him ever though. But some of the ball striking metrics last week at least started to show in a positive direction. So
do you worry about his up and down game there with the wedges?
Yeah, that's. I think it's going to be one of those situations where you look on Sunday and he's inside the top 20, or you look on Sunday and he's sitting at home of wherever he lives because he didn't make the cut. Like there's probably no in between on him there. So I could
get behind Højgaard. I
think he's a high risk, high reward sort of play. Just know that the floor is about as bad. Like his floor to me, my model does not like Sergio, even without the ownership that we're talking about here, but add in the ownership, like the floor outcomes from Sergio and Højgaard, and Sergio has another one of those massive deviations in my sheet between upside and safety. That's the exact thing that Højgaard's looking at. It's just Højgaard shot up a little bit more, which is why I think he's playable. But there's that worry of the Sergio answer, just that less ownership there. I think Keegan's fine. My upside numbers like Eric Cole. My upside numbers, but that's been a every week thing with Eric Cole, and maybe that's just running it from a little bit longer of time. But
I thought he was kind of broken too.
He might be, and that's the problem with it. But I don't know. Last couple of results, not looking directly at the data right now from it, but 2 top 33s.
One AirPod just died. We got the left ear out. It's good. We're doing good.
Yeah, we're doing great.
All right, Eric Cole. What's the ownership? He can make putts. 3%, I see
3%. Dunlap. Zach just said Dunlap. My model didn't like him. The market loves Dunlap. Take that for what it's worth. Maybe there's some playability with Dunlap here with the way that he strikes the ball and the distance that maybe he can provide.
I feel like I'd rather have Jake Knapp.
Similar answer there. And my model like Jake Knapp too, with that same for that same reason. I guess if we're looking for somebody like that, Eckroat ownership has been steadily climbing recently. I'm still okay with where it's at just because I think he's such a great value. But the one name for me, and this is not 1%, I'm curious to see where you have him. I do think Adam Schenk is interesting.
I looked at Adam Schenk. I see 4% ownership though.
That's what I see 3.9%. So I'll
keep Adam Schenk in there. All right. He played Bankgrass his whole life being from the Midwest. So I'll put him in.
The problem is, Nick, when you look at the $6,000 section here, I think a lot of the playable options like Shank, 3.9%, Eckroat, I have him trending towards 7% right
Yeah.
now.
Same.
Taylor Moore is starting to push that like 7 to 9% range for me. Those are kind of where the values are lying or laying at the most part inside of my model. Knapp, upside numbers, I see sub 4%. Adam Hadwin, upside numbers, I see sub 5%.
Yep.
Eric Cole, upside numbers, I see 3%. So
just feel like Eric Cole's trash.
What happened to Eric Cole? He went from being the weekly person that maybe books knew
Everybody
something.
fucking loved him.
Yeah, and the books didn't though. And every single week they provided these matchups with Eric Cole where he was a massive underdog. He won every single matchup for about an 8-month period of time, and then all of a sudden he hit a wall hard.
I'll put him in. Now I have more players than I started with. Fucking A, Spencer. Give me a 1%, or is there none? Is it 2% Cam Davis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably as good as you're going to get. And like even Zach said about with Dunlap, I'm running limited sample size of data here for him, but I would need to regress the totals to probably be more where they are. But like he is the best projected par 5 scorer that I have in my sheet. Like that's a potential that he brings that a lot of these guys don't. I think that's probably why the market's moving. But to answer your question, Nick, I don't think there is anybody. I think you're forcing it. Like the problem with the Masters, and specifically here when we get a pay scale like this, the rollover predictability between years is so pronounced. And I think that people know exactly what you should be looking for. And unfortunately, those results are usually what ends up transpiring throughout the event. So you don't really find these under the radar commodities because one, everybody has already built in extra weight in their model for course history at Augusta. And
right.
Two, the specific skill sets that you need of this around the green and 3-putt avoidance, and you got to score on these par 5s. Everybody knows of those answers. So I do think it's difficult to find these under the radar answers for that reason. Like I can tell you who the best leverage play would be. I mean, it might not give you a 1% play.
That's fine. It could be 2.
Tom Kimshas is the best leverage play. I don't know if we want to go there.
I don't think so.
I don't think I do either. Eric Cole would show as the best leverage play I have, if not for him.
Oh God,
Ricky Fowler would be. And I mean that.
I'll take Ricky. That's going to raise though. It'll raise.
And then
because people know his name, you get a lot of debutant DFS players.
There is no possibility that my percentage I have for him will be where it closes. So I agree. Cameron Davis would be fourth there, and then Jake Knapp, Yeager, Dustin Johnson, Homa, Hatton, Cantlay. That's pretty much the spots of like getting massively different.
Any Woodland thoughts? I was in on him for a while. I saw 5%. I got out. I want a 1 or 2% Gary. Maybe it closes that way, but my number. I mean, obviously peaking on the irons at Texas, but dude, this guy hasn't made a putt in 3 years.
I'm okay on Woodland outside of that ownership that you're talking about. But I even still think he's playable there. Like he's a fringe cut maker for me that has some upside in my model.
Okay. All right. Well, I got some nut cutting to do then, but everybody, we greatly appreciate you hopping in. I'm running out of battery. Any further questions, put them in. Hey, if your picks win, you're getting a kiss. That's always fantastic. It's good stuff.
Wonderful.
Hey, and yes, thank you everybody for tuning in. Over 100 people. Greatly appreciate that. Hit the like button, whatever you want to do. Follow at Bettor Golf Pod on Twitter. And good luck this week. It sounds like they are going to delay the tee time tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, that's what it seems like right now.
All right. I came onto the show with 36 players in my player pool. Now I have 43. So Spencer, fuck you very much. I gotta cut that down. I don't know what to do, but we'll figure that out. First round leader. I don't do that stuff. Do you have anybody? Actually, I had John Rahm last year because it was my only way to get exposure to him that I could actually.
You hit that right? It wasn't he the first round leader? Yeah.
Yeah, and he took like triple on hole 1, so he actually got paid more than what he won by. But any first round leaders?
I don't know. I mean, my model
I
likes
have no.
Fitzpatrick, but
Your mom loves Fitzpatrick. It scares me. It depends on when they tee off too. Like, there's no weather edge, I don't think, in my mind, because who knows when they'll start. I want to say Ben on. If I had to give you somebody, I'll go Ben on.
sometimes you get these, and I've made this argument numerous times. It happened with Jaeger, I believe, at the PGA Championship, I want to say, where sometimes when you're a late addition to the field on DraftKings and you're not initially in the first drop of pricing there, I know Ben On is starting to now attract some ownership, which is the unfortunate answer, and I wish it wasn't that case with it, but sometimes you can find some mispricings in general with those names, and I think, Nick, you were able to find that on the top 20 ticket that you talked about. It was a top 20, right, with him?
Yes.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, do you want to do what we did last time we went live? Favorite player from each section?
Yeah. Let's see here. Top of the board, we'll go 10K and above. I'm going Jon Rahm.
I'll go Rory. Rahm would be my second choice.
9K and above, I'm going to stand by Ludwig. I trust the talent. I trust the swing. I trust the player. I trust the caddy even more than all of the above.
I get the ownership questions with Xander going up. I'll say Xander. Oberg would be my second choice. So 2 for 2 on the second choice there.
8K, I'm going to go with Tony Finau.
It's our show. We do it every single week. Yeah. I'm saying Tony Finau.
Love that. Yeah, we make our own rules. Who cares what corporate says? 7K and above. Do you like Jason Day? We didn't talk about him. You fine with him being in there like 5-6%?
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, he scores with bad ball striking, and then you look at the weeks where his iron play is there. He top fives everything. So it's like, if those irons come, I love that upside. I think he's a GPP darling. By the way, I forgot to talk about him.
Let me give a 25-second answer on Jason Day here. This is not the days when I would talk about Jason Day for 2 hours.
I will take the over in 25 seconds, but go.
If you look at what Jason Day has done historically at the Masters, phenomenal results past the recent stuff. Inside of my 7 Deadly Sins article, if you remove the one trait at the very end of having a top 30 finish over the past 3 years, Jason Day would have made the cut as somebody who could have won. I think this is an interesting spot for him. Like, if you could just date it back to 4 years, he's all of a sudden on that list.
Love it. 24 seconds on the dot. That was fantastic. Great line. Yeah, and he was his best finish was what, T39? So he's like still very close to the threshold you set.
Yeah.
Give me Jason Day.
I like the Jason Day pick. I will say Matthew Fitzpatrick just because I've been on that one, but I agree with everything that you said about Jason Day. This is the GPP high upside options that we are trying to find to win some of these millionaire makers and contests like that. I love Jason Day in that regard.
If the irons show up, the short game is just robotic with him. So if the iron's there and it's a spike week, I think he could top 5 this thing. 6K, I will stand by my work. I hate the ownership, but I hate fading players just because I like them all week, and then I see a number that's somewhat uncomfortable. I will still stay with Ben on.
In an ideal world, if it was possible, I'd like to get up to the $7,000 range and take Harris English. But when I find myself in this $6,000 section, Austin Eckroat for me.
Love it. All right. Peace out, guys. Thank you very much. Spencer, thanks for everything. Check out that article. Let me post a link once more. For all of those that just now tuned in, it is one of my favorite reads of the year. So check that out. I just posted it in all the chats here. So there you go. What a top 30 last year without Vertigo. That's right.
Exactly.
Let's get a top 10 this year. Jason Day. I think he's in my single entry large GPP field this week. So, all right. Good luck. Thanks, Spencer. Appreciate you guys. And good luck to everybody this week. And hopefully we get some golf at some point tomorrow morning so we can all fake like we're working and just watch TV.
Yep. Use code BGP over on Underdog.
Good call. Peace out.